Childhood dysfunction can significantly impact our relationship with money in adulthood. The experiences and environment we grew up in shape our attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors around finances. For example, if someone grew up in a household with financial instability or witnessed their parents struggling with money or fighting over money, they might develop anxiety or fear around financial security, which can then in turn make them someone who repels money constantly or ends up getting money and spending it right away or ends up avoiding it altogether or doing a version of what I did and still can do sometimes and become a chipmunk. And you just can't save enough. And if you don't have enough, you don't feel safe. You don't feel secure. The reason why I talk about this so often is in coaching more than 150,000 people worldwide. I have noticed that there is, without a doubt, a clear connection between the images, the energy, the vibe, the verbal messages, the nonverbal messages that you got around money, around abundance, and how you act that out in adulthood. And most of this happens subconsciously. And I'm going to share 6 signs that childhood dysfunction is causing your money drama today. If you're tired of hearing the same old basic mindset and motivational fluff talk, you've come to the right show. Welcome to ProjectME with Tiffany Carter, the podcast, where we dish on everything from managing that crazy brain of yours to manifesting abundance to my straightforward, actionable steps that will make you major money online. Now, I'm not your typical multimillionaire entrepreneur. It takes a small village to keep my anxiety and depression in check. I'm inherently disorganized with an intense obsession with office supplies. Your girl here is a digital marketing content expert who's generated over $200 million in sales. I promise by tuning in twice a week, you will get a much needed refreshing dose of truth, clarity, and cash making advice. Now let's get to it. What up, my people, my posse, my fellow crazies? It's your host, Tiffany Carter, and this is the show that is going to help you grow your business, your bank account, your abundance, your relationships, that big, beautiful brain of yours, and everything in between. And for those of you who are tuning in from ProjectME TV on YouTube, how do we like this new mic flag? I'm very into it. And look, when you turn it, there's a special surprise. That made me really excited. If you are someone who is a visual learner or gets distracted easily, it would be great for you to also watch the show on ProjectME TV, and then you can comment in real time. It seems to be helping a lot of people. We're growing rapidly over there. This episode I've turned into a 2-part series. So this is part 1. I find when we discuss things about childhood dysfunction, messages that we picked up in our childhood, money wounds, traumas, buried stuff, if you include too much information at once, we can have a nervous system response where we kind of like zone out, glaze over, shut down. And so I'm splitting this topic up into 2 parts. So you're getting the first 3 things today, which are the first 3 of the 6 signs that your childhood dysfunctional environment and interpreted messages that you picked up around money can be showing up as an adult as money limiting behaviors and beliefs in your present life. Now, some of these you might be aware of within yourself, like maybe you're a procrastinator, or you have some other behaviors that you've picked up either by doing work, going to therapy, listening to this show because you're self-aware. But then you don't know how to actually change them. And then you keep doing them. And then you keep beating yourself up about doing them because this actually is ineffective. This is a block. Then you shame yourself. Then you end up stuck and round we go. And then there are some of these that are completely subconscious. And today may be the first time you're putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Now, I titled this episode Childhood Trauma, Maybe Causing Your Money Drama. And it's like, oh, trauma. Well, my childhood wasn't trauma. Well, there's a lot of schools of thought and definition around trauma. So try not to get too hooked on that word. I'm also not placing any blame necessarily on your caregivers. There are multi-generational messages around money. Money is so powerful. It's so potent. It's such a big energy, which is why I like working with it, and why when you start getting better and you master those energetics of money, oh my God, the world of abundance opens up to you because it is such a powerful energy to work with. But if you don't work with it and you kind of ignore it, you put it off, you think this stuff sounds like hocus pocus. So you're like, yeah. You're just going to stay in the same spot. So all I'm asking is for you to be open-minded and know, like you could say, I have a great childhood. That's possible. I mean, most people listening to the show, though, you had some shit happen or you wouldn't be attracted to me, is my guess. So here we go. The first thing is settling for mediocre, settling for it's just good enough. You know, if you're doing this, you might do it in relationships. And typically, how we do one thing is how we do all things. You might be settling for it in friendships. You might be settling for it in how you feel in your body. You might be settling for it in a couch that you have at your house. And that comfortability and familiarity of settling for mediocre didn't just randomly pop up. You watched this happen in your childhood. Maybe your mom constantly settled for less, and you picked that up just by watching her. Perhaps you had to be okay with less because you never got your needs met. You never got what you wanted, or it felt unsafe to express what you wanted. Or when you did, you got teased, you got made fun of, you got shut down. You were told like, you're dreaming. That doesn't happen in families like ours, like da 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 da. And so what it ends up teaching you is to minimize your desires, minimize your dreams, really water them down, and then go, well, this is good enough. I should be happy with this. I have a video that is going viral right now on TikTok. So you need to go check it out at ProjectME with Tiffany over there. And also make sure you're following me on Instagram at ProjectME with Tiffany, because I have completely different content on those platforms. And the video's going viral, I believe, is because what I feel I do really well is I give you a perspective on something you've not heard before. I don't serve basic stuff here. We're not about that life. I don't need to tell you, make sure you drink more water. It's like, that's a waste of your time. I share things with you that you might not have thought of, or a perspective shift, or something to look at, or a question to ask yourself. And many people who grew up in a religious environment, there's a lot of toxic gratitude that goes on. And you've heard of like toxic positivity, toxic shame, toxic stress. Well, toxic gratitude can seem like it's packaged in a way where it's positive, but it actually makes you feel shame and self-judgment. It can sound something like this. Well, you should be grateful for what you got. There's starving children in the world. Well, you should be grateful. We have a lot as a family. And look at so-and-so's family. They're really struggling. And it teaches you that wanting more, desiring more, even yearning for more, even genuinely like having a need for more in your life, whether it's more fulfillment, it's more money, it's more freedom of time, it's more freedom of energy, it's more joy, that is bad, that makes you ungrateful, that makes you spoiled, that makes you entitled, that makes you an ungodly person. And it's crap. And I don't even think necessarily these key people in your life were doing that on purpose. They probably had that done to them and they repeat it. And a lot of the people in the comment section on this video, which I commend you guys for doing that, admitted that they've said this stuff to their own kids. And the video kind of woke them up like, oh my God, because we just do that. I mean, we do not address and learn and uncover some of this stuff and we're not aware of it, of course we're going to pass it on. So I want you to give yourself grace and some grace to, some of the people in your life that likely were doing this unknowingly. Now, in my case, my mom being a narcissist, whew, she would call me an ungrateful, spoiled brat when I wanted anything. That was her favorite line to call me. Oh, it makes me, ugh. If you saw my face, or if you're watching on YouTube, you see my face. It makes me shrill because I can hear that sharp tone in her voice. And I was the perfect daughter. I was the little girl who said, please and thank you. May I be excused? I followed all the rules because if I didn't, it didn't end well for me. So I wasn't this kid who was like, buy me this toy. I mean, that was not happening. I never asked for anything unless it was asked to me, like, what do you want for your birthday? And I was still very careful. And it would be if I maybe didn't like something or I wanted something more. It was for very fair and reasonable things. And she'd call me this. So maybe you were called some things and you were in more of an environment like I was. And what that taught me is me wanting more, me desiring more for myself makes me an ungrateful, spoiled brat, especially things that can seem like nice to haves and luxuries in life. You might have heard a lot in your childhood, oh, must be nice. You might even have a mother-in-law, father-in-law. You might even have your partner, someone, people are still saying this shit. Like if I wasn't no contact with my mom, all this shit would still be said. She says it behind my back now. So I hear it through a third party, which is called triangulation. And I set boundaries with that as well. And this stuff, these messages we hear over and over again, we end up absorbing them. Then that critical parent, the internal dialogue, that inner bully, then we end up abusing ourselves with it. It's a form of actual, if you think about it, abundance abuse, truly, because you're being shamed, you're being put down, you're being ridiculed, you're being told, whether it's verbally, non-verbally, or both, or even like behaviorally, that you desiring more for your life, having a life that's easier, working less and making more, having a beach house, being able to vacation regularly in nice places for your family, wanting a certain car, wanting to be able to work part-time but still make a lot of money, wanting to be able to get massages and facials, wanting a bigger wedding ring, that makes you bad somehow. And therefore, money's bad. Therefore, being rich is bad. Being wealthy is bad. So why would you be attracting it? You're keeping yourself on a mediocre frequency. So it's been explained. I think Bob Proctor explains it this way. And so I love using analogies because it really sinks in. It's like settling for mediocre. You're on an AM radio station. And the cash, the wealth, the abundance, the support, the love, the experiences, the opportunities, the ease that you want, that's on an FM channel. It might even be on satellite radio, quite frankly. But you're operating on AM because that's what you were told is safe. This is safe. This is status quo. This is how you're accepted in this household. This is what makes you a good girl. This is what makes you a good boy. This is what makes you a godly person. This is what makes you an ungodly person. So all your nervous system and ego is doing, it's designed to keep you safe, not causing ruffling feathers, not being abandoned, not being talked about, not being discarded, not being ridiculed. So you stay in that AM station. But the frequency of the abundance you want is actually on satellite radio. I mean, there's still a lot of abundance in FM. So for you to go from AM frequency to satellite radio, that's a big jump. And it's not like you're not going to get there, but let's take some steps. Let's not set you up. That'd be like you're 40 pounds overweight and you know it. And like you set this expectation in like 5 months, that's supposed to all be gone. It's like, unless you're on the Ozempic train, which by the way, just got another warning a few days ago that it causes some other problem. Just saying, for those of you who are considering it, I don't know. That's a whole nother episode. But you're trying to fast track something. There's always a catch when you try to fast track, whether it's your weight loss, whether it's finding a loving partner, whether it's building a business, whether it's transitioning out of corporate into starting your own thing, whether it's a podcast, whether it's an Instagram, TikTok account. You're going to pay a price. And I don't want to see that on my watch. Okay. I've made this mistake before and I lost almost everything I had. So I'm speaking from experience with receipts. I want you to have the money in the bank, the option level cash in the bank, and it's sustained and it only grows, not to where you have it and like you go bankrupt in 18 months. All right. Second thing, over functioning to exhaustion is a major key sign that you have childhood dysfunction that is showing up as behaviors and beliefs in your adult life that is repelling the money that you want. You have something deep within you, likely subconscious as it was for me and many, many people I work with. So, I have my fall applications open for my exclusive 2-month private business coaching program. This is the most exclusive way to work with me. Who this is best for, I work with 2 types of people. Entrepreneurs starting from zero who are making between $0 and $10,000 a month, who are wanting to scale to multiple 6 figures. So you can be starting from scratch. Everything inside this 2-month private coaching program, we do all of the money mindset wounding and reprogramming and all of the direct actionable strategy in order for you to be prioritizing bringing fresh cash into your business so you can work less and make more. I also teach higher level people who are just further along in the journey. That doesn't make them better than you or more worthy than you. They're further along and they're already making at least, I would say, like $300,000 a year. And they're wanting to scale to the millions and multiple millions. And they're in that zone. It's the same application for both. I am not cheap, but I am not wildly expensive like a lot of these coaches are charging. Because one of the things that I teach you is we don't need to charge egregious prices in order to make a crap ton of money. That's not necessary. But you've got to put skin in the game. You're getting a top level business strategist, money mindset expert, and consultant. And all of my intellectual property from all the mega big brands that I work with. And I apply those same things that work for big brands to your small business. And you want to fast track something, you learn from someone who has what you want and you invest in it and you show up and you follow through. That's like the holy grail way to work with me. So just wanted to let you know what's going on. Usually once I mention it, within less than a week, those spots are filled. And you can swipe up in show notes. I want you to DM me on Instagram if you want the application. I'm not just going to put the application in here because I need to know that you're serious about this, because I'll show up for you, but I need to know like you're dead ass. You're not a dead ass, but you're dead ass serious. This over functioning. Wow, this was me. I mean, I became a workaholic. And it really is rooted in self-worth. I wouldn't have believed that, though. If someone told me that back then, I would have been like, I don't have low self-worth. I'm a confident person. But I really had no self-worth. It was constantly feeling like I had to do more and be more and show up more in order to get more. Because what is that really saying? I'm not enough exactly as I am. I was deprioritizing my well-being physically, mentally, and spiritually. I was bankrupting myself of joy. I was bankrupting myself of sleep. I was bankrupting myself of fulfillment in exchange for being able to get the successes, accolades, and money that I wanted. I didn't know any other way. My mom learned this way. She must have learned it from her parents, and she showed it to me. I watched her do it. She was an entrepreneur. So why wouldn't I do that? And then I also became an exercise addict. And it's a legit addiction. I just picked ones that were more socially acceptable. Now, does overfunctioning pay off to a certain extent? Yes, it does. And then it really backfires. Why? It's not sustainable. And you're really not happy. I like to say overfunctioning can get you rich and it can get you like skinny, but it can't make you wealthy and it can't make you healthy. That's the problem. And what we want to do here, which is why I always close the show wishing you great health, wealth, and worth. That's what I want for you. And this is part of the working less and making more. And yes, my workbook is coming out soon. I know those of you who wrote the review in order to get it for free are like, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? I turned it into a guided workbook course. You're going to just have to be patient because I want to make sure I deliver stuff that's legit. So we didn't forget about you. It's coming. And then it will be for sale. And you'll know all the things, especially if you're on my Secret Posse Weekly Digest email list and you can swipe up and make sure you get on that. That's completely free. And you want on this thing because this is where I share stories and I share very provocative questions that you've never been asked before to really help you uncover this stuff. So I was forced into repairing and addressing this overfunctioning because I got so sick that my body was producing excess cortisol for so long that I burnt out my adrenals. Like I had to carry rescue cortisol with me because without cortisol, which is the stress hormone, you'll go into cardiac arrest. It is a necessary hormone. And I was a disaster and I'm stubborn and it had to happen that way. I was so addicted to that. There's also negative excitement, as I call it, in overfunctioning. It's like a productivity high. There's even society kind of teaches and rewards that high. So you might have been rewarded for being a great student, a great athlete, great at all the things. You did the chores, you took care of your siblings, like you cleaned the house and you got a lot of praise and feedback for it. Then maybe you got into like the corporate world and you're going to get a lot of praise and feedback for it. You might even get raises. I got bonuses, I got awards, I got trips for all of this stuff for overfunctioning. So then it just feeds into it and then you do it and you keep doing it and you keep doing it. But the price that's coming to you is you're not happy. You're exhausted all the time. I know that this is a majority of you listening right now. You're fucking tired because you've been running this way your whole life and you don't know that there's another way and you don't trust that there's another way. You kind of want to believe it. You've kind of been hearing me and maybe some other people, but is like, is that really true? It sounds almost too good to be true. And you have all this proof that this overfunctioning has worked. It has gotten you some results, but at a very high cost. So you were taught that you had to overgive in order to get crumbs in your childhood. You had to overperform. You had to be an extra good girl, an extra good boy. You had to, be a caretaker. You had to do all these things in order for you to get love, in order for you to get acceptance, in order for you to get an allowance, in order for you to get praise. And so, of course, you're going to continue that behavior because that's what you were taught. And it can feel very scary to go down to a level of pure prosperous functioning is what I like to call it, because you have so much evidence. Well, the overfunctioning work. Well, no, it's not working. And I need you to acknowledge that it's not working anymore. You are just able to sustain it for a period of time. And usually I notice when people can't do it anymore, I see it, the wheels falling off the bus for people for sure by age 35. But some of you who are really, really rooted in it and stubborn, it can take longer. But I used to always say, even in my 20s, God, I feel like I'm 80 years old. Like I always felt tired in my 20s too. Of course, you're over functioning. It's not necessary. And how do we get out of that? you need to start experimenting with doing less and making more, which is why that's my guided workbook course coming out. I have it. I think I have it on my cup now. I do. And if you're watching on the tube, you can see it. Make more, work less. And you might go, well, I can't what are you talking about, Tiffany? Like just sitting back and doing nothing. I'll end up in a tent. I'm not talking about that. It's strategically doing less, paring it back, subtracting from all the over functioning. You are the problem when you're over functioning, and you may have witnessed a parent do it or a caregiver do it in your life. You end up over functioning for under functioning people. This is probably a shooketh moment for you. And I want a 5-star Apple podcast review for it or a shout out on social media. And you can tag me at ProjectME with Tiffany. Yeah. You are so accustomed to over functioning that you attract people who underfunction. Blood related, non-blood related, could be people in your work environment, could be fucking people you employ. That happened with me too, because it's just so common and comfortable and familiar for you to overfunction. But then you get resentful of the underfunctioning people, and then you get mad at them. But you're a key part of the equation. You've been overfunctioning. So I want you to ask yourself, what would it look like for me to step out of the overfunctioning version of me and step into the prosperously functioning? I'm going to do prosperous functioning. That's what I'm going to do. What does it take? What does it look like to dial that down a notch? And I want you to write that out. Maybe some of you who avoid journaling, you can think about it or discuss it with a trusted friend, or you can type it right here in the comments on YouTube. What does that look like? For me, it really looked like taking a true inventory of all the crap I do and what is really important, what is really necessary, what is an income generating activity, and what are the joy generating activities. And what am I doing for other people that they need to be doing themselves? Or at least it needs to be a shared effort, where it's not, seems like a silly example, but it's very real in my world. So with my ex-fiance, who's a lovely person, and this, a lot of this dynamic isn't done on purpose. It can feel that way, but it's not always done on purpose. Sometimes it is, though. And I, for some reason, decided that I started, of course, over functioning in a relationship, because how we do one thing is how we do all things. If I had a human child, I would over function in that too, right? And I would have to work through that. So I thought that me, who doesn't cook, who hates cooking, not interested, I thought in order to be wifey, I need to cook. I need to be in charge of dinner. I think this also comes from society and what roles they place on women that are still around. Why the fuck does a woman have to be in charge of dinner? What? And cleaning? Where does that fucking come from? And if that's a role you enjoy, that's fine. But if it's not, what's that about? And I took that on. And I was over functioning in that area. And somehow I became in charge of dinner, and it really started pissing me off. I didn't want that role. Here I'm running 2 fucking companies, making sure, Virgo vibes. I need to make sure the house is clean and organized. That's just what's going to happen. Even though I have a house manager, it's still daily organizing, make sure it looks nice. So I was already in charge doing all this stuff. And now I have to do dinner. And I was pissed about it, but who started it? Me. And what did I teach my partner? I taught him that he didn't have to worry about dinner. He, in fact, would actually say, I don't know. I didn't even think about it, which made me want to stab a fork in his eye. He didn't think about it because I taught him he didn't have to, from me over functioning. You have a lot of that going on in your life, and I want you to take an inventory of it and where you're pulling back. And some people aren't going to like it in your life that you're not going to overfunction. Guess why? Because that means they're going to actually have to start prosperously functioning instead of underfunctioning. And some of these people are your children. And guess what? We need them to prosperously function and not underfunction. And there's some people who've got to go. People you need to fire, people on your team, people who work for you, friends you need to fire. There's going to be stuff that has to happen if you want what you're saying you want with the money in abundance. Okay, third thing. Are you guys vibing this? I need to know. This is helpful. I hope you are, but I do this show for you. So I want to know if you are finding this genuinely helpful and impactful and insightful. The best way is if you're watching on YouTube, comment, obviously subscribe to the show and leave an Apple podcast review, a written review of the show. And that would be really great to hear. What is it you want to learn more of? What episode you really love? That's great. You can reply to any of our emails as well, too. Third thing, consistently worried about what, quote unquote, they will think. What are they going to think about me? You know what the they usually is? It's not strangers on the interwebs. It's people in your family, people you went to high school with, people who you used to work with, people who you currently work with, your neighbors, people at church. It's never about the strangers. And being so worried about what they will think. Well, you didn't randomly start caring about that. You picked that up from somewhere. Maybe your mom was someone who was very worried about what other people thought. Maybe that was a family dynamic where you guys had a front that everything was good and dandy, but it was really a shit show behind the scenes. And you just learned that you had to, put on like a polished, pretty version and not the real stuff, or you had family secrets that no one talked about. Could be how one of my clients, and I had this too, where in her particular, and she says this is very common. She's Mexican, and she said that it's very common in the Mexican community where the women especially just talk shit. I had an Indian client too, not that long ago, who said that's also common in the Indian community with women, particularly, where there's lots of gossip and shade being thrown. Like, can you believe she wore that? She didn't bring a gift when she went over to the baby christening. Oh, she was late when she did this. Can so-and-so got this car? That's so showy. Can you believe they got that car? Lots of that stuff going on. So when you pick that up in childhood and in your teenage years, no one wants to be talked about. No one wants to be negatively pointed out. So what that shows you is I need to be very careful about what I do, what I spend, how I present myself, what I buy, how I carry myself in order to stay safe, in order to stay accepted and not abandoned in the family dynamic. And then you carry that on. And it ends up holding you back because you don't go after things that are out of the box and against the grain because you don't want those people to see it. I know how many of you there are because I've coached over 150,000 of you who don't start this business idea, don't start sharing stuff on video, don't publish the book, don't start the thing, don't change from your corporate career that you're miserable in into doing something else because you're so paralyzed about what they will think. Oh my God, my mom watches all of my stuff. I'm never going to hear the end of this. Well, you need to block these people. And if you're like, I can't block them, then they'll know I block them. Then I want you to think of this. Who are you living for? This is your life. Are you living for, are you going to continue to stay suffering in mediocrity and stay settling for less in order to appease these people who they're not going after their big things and doing big things? And I know your nervous system and I know your inner child, all bells go off on alert. That's not good. I won't be invited over for Christmas dinner and I will be all alone and I don't want to hear about it and I don't want to deal with it. And I'm going to have to pay some price for going after my dreams, for thinking bigger, for being bold, for getting what I want. Yeah, you don't have to. You can continue to stay where you're at. But is that really fair to yourself? Is that the message that you want to send to your children? Is that the message you want to send to other people around you? is that, yeah, you better stay in that box, that safe box, in order to avoid what they will think. Fuck what they will think. Are they paying all your bills? Are they going to be there when you take your last breath? Are they living inside your head? Are they living inside your body? No. And I get it. I might sound really emphatic right now. It's because I wish I had someone who is this emphatic speaking to me this bluntly, because it would have woken me up. I was terrified to start a podcast primarily because I didn't want my mom to hear it, which is funny because why would a narcissist listen to my show? That's right. Obviously not. She doesn't probably even remember I have a podcast. Yes, Chubbs. Chubbs agrees with all of this. You have to ask yourself that question. What is it costing you to continue worrying about what they will think? How about what matters is what you think of yourself? But you were taught that what you think of yourself is not as important as what other people think of you. And it's a lie. It's a lie. And I'm going to leave it right there because I feel like that's our max. Chubbs is barking, giving us clear orders that this is already a lot to process and to really sink in. And you might need to listen to it a few more times. So we're going to just keep it here, keep it at that. Wishing you great health, wealth, and worth as always. Love you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a 5-star review on iTunes. Not only will this make me super happy, but it will allow more listeners to find our special show. Simply help me help others.